should we move on to Down Under, and where the King and Queen are having a lovely time in Australia?
An Indigenous politician has caused a stir in Australia after shouting at King Charles as he made a speech at Parliament House. Independent Senator Lidia Thorpe accused the royal family of committing genocide, and then she was politely told to get out by the security.
Yes, of course. And since then, Australia's pro-monarchy group has called for her immediate resignation. Let's take a look at the clip.
You are a genocide! This is not your land! This is not your land! You are not my king! You are not our king!
Yeah, I mean, the royal family are used to this, aren't they, when they go to certain places that are after their independence. But it's still a bit...
But why do people get... I just don't understand why people get so worked up about things like this. She doesn't sound too Indigenous to me with a name like Lidia Thorpe, but I couldn't see her close up there or whatever. But let's go to our royal correspondent, Cameron Walker. He's got the story on this.
Committed genocide against our people! Give us our land back! Give us what you stole from us! Our bones, our skulls, our babies, our people! You destroyed our land! Give us a treaty! We want a treaty in this country! You are a genocide! This is not your land! This is not your land! You are not my king! You are not our king!
Well, some very dramatic scenes inside the Parliament building here in Canberra as Lidia Thorpe, a Victorian senator, interrupted the end of King Charles's speech, literally screaming at him, "You are not my king, this is not your land." She had to be pushed out of the chamber because her outburst just continued and kept continuing and completely overshadowed events inside the building itself. The King was here to spend time with lawmakers here in Australia as well as attend a reception. Of course, that reception has already made headlines earlier this week because the 6 states premiers here in Australia all declined an invitation to this reception being hosted by the Prime Minister of Australia, Anthony Albanese. Luckily, the King did manage to deliver a vast majority of his speech before he was interrupted, and this is what he said.
Let me also say how deeply I appreciated this morning's moving Welcome to Country ceremony, which offers me the opportunity to pay my respects to the traditional owners of the lands on which we meet, the Ngunnawal people and all First Nations peoples who have loved and cared for this continent for 65,000 years.
Well, the King and Queen seemed unbothered by the outburst when they emerged from the Parliament building a little earlier on. They greeted members of the public with smiles who were cheering them on. Of course, the public have been waiting hours in this searing heat here in Canberra to get a chance to meet their Majesties, and their Majesties very much obliged. They spent quite a lot of time with members of the public here. I spoke to a few of them earlier, and this is what they told me.
To come all this way, it's amazing when he hasn't been well.
I've never seen them in the flesh before, so I'm just really excited.
Oh, it's a big deal. New King's in town, coming to meet his delegates. It's good, isn't it?
Absolutely wonderful for the country. I mean, they just love this place, and I think the people love them as well.
I love royalty, I love the monarchy. It's our heritage here in Australia for a lot of people, so it's really nice to celebrate it and be proud of.
The King has a very gruelling schedule here today. He's got several other engagements before he concludes his day in Canberra. Tomorrow he's got a full day of engagements in Sydney, and then on Wednesday he's flying off to Samoa for the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting and a state visit. So despite his cancer diagnosis, he is still very much working hard.
On the subject of health, the Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, has said that he may consider fining you if you miss a doctor's appointment.
Very interesting. Roughly 8 million appointments are missed every year, with the government hoping that this could save the NHS around £1 billion.
Keir Starmer's launching the biggest ever public consultation on the future of the NHS today. Number 10 will look to create digital passports so NHS staff can access health records more easily.
Yeah, which sort of gives you the heebie-jeebies a bit, because when government tries to go digital in any way at all, things happen, don't they? Anyway, joining us now, former Health Minister Lord James Bethell. It's lovely to see you.
Good morning, Anne.
Well, first of all, what do you think of the idea of going digital for a start?
Well, digital is working well. I know some people struggle with it, but the app is used now by 35 million people really effectively. And the way in which you can now book your appointment and get your prescriptions done and see all your record is changing things for a lot of people. I wish it worked a bit better. I wish there was more that you could do with it. But this is the future of medicine. This is where we're going to go.
You know, Jim, things that I have heard that they're proposing having physiotherapists and chiropodists and whatever based in a health centre where you would go and see your GP. This makes just great sense to me. That, you know, if you go and get something done, they say, go 2 doors down and see that expert, not go to a hospital that's 10 miles away and wait 6 weeks before you get an appointment.
I know. Eamon, it comes as a shock to the doctors, but people don't like going to hospital. They find them intimidating. A lot of them are out of town, awkward to get to.
Expensive to park at.
And full of infection. I mean, you're going to pick something up if you spend too long in a hospital, and that's just a fact of life. No, we should pivot towards neighbourhood clinical support. And also, it's not always a doctor that needs to fix you. It is, as you say, a therapist or a physio or someone maybe to take your blood or diagnostics. Those things can happen on your doorstep. I mean, they really shouldn't be a big odyssey to go and get something done. So that pivot to local community health is absolutely essential. We won't make the country healthy if we don't do that.
But we've got a responsibility too, haven't we, to, for instance, turn up to our appointments. I mean, that figure of 8 million appointments missed, is that our fault, or is it that appointments are made that we're not told about until they're finished? Or I don't know. I mean, what's happening there?
It is a mixture. There is too much appointments sent by post, for instance. I mean, that's crazy in this day and age. But really, the social contract on the NHS is not quite balanced. There isn't enough emphasis, I think, on people being expected to look after their own health, including taking their medicines when they're prescribed. Half of people stop taking statins, even half a year after having a heart attack, and turning up to your appointments. And if you don't turn up to your appointment, you're wasting a ton of money, £1.2 billion, at a time when we've got 7.5 million on the waiting list. That's crazy. So I think it's a symbolic rebooting. If you can get a parking ticket for 40 quid for putting your car in the wrong place, I think you can get a ticket for not turning up for an appointment.
5 or 10 for not turning up appointment. But Jim, also, I think this is a huge dilemma. It's a huge concern. Both Anne and I, over the last 7 or 8 years or so, we have had to make use of hospitals and doctors' appointments more often than we have been used to before. But I have an awful lot of personal responsibility for what is wrong with me, and physio appointments, whenever I pay for them privately. You know, that's what I do. But do you not think that the NHS surely is expected to offer or be a cure-all for everything? There must be something where we say, right, we'll fix your broken leg, we'll fix your ear falling off or whatever it happens to be, but we're not doing a lot of other more minor things that I think should be people's responsibility themselves.
I mean, it's a massive dilemma because you're right on the treatment. Sure, the NHS is definitely there for your broken leg, but a lot of disease can be prevented much, much earlier. And particularly when people are in a state of distress, if they've got a mental challenge, if they're obese, or if they're struggling with diabetes or with drinking too much, sometimes they do need a leg up. And for the country, we save ourselves a fortune if we intervene early instead of waiting for them to have 4 or 5 morbidities and dropping out of work. Now, you don't want to have a country where the NHS is responsible for handing out bags of carrots to everyone who needs a good meal. On the other hand, those early interventions can completely transform someone's life chances and save us a ton of money. So I do think we're going to need to pivot towards prevention, but at the same time, putting responsibility and a clear message to people that they need to step up.
I think what we do is we have things like sugar tax. But when you look at, products that are being made, processed foods and whatever, why are these allowed to be made in the first place? If they're bad for us, and I could name you 20 products, that I would have every day, and you think, but this is killing me, this is bad for me, but it's there, it's convenient, it's what I've been used to and whatever. Why are they allowed to be sold? Why isn't government, and government is failing on this front, not intervening and saying, we're not just taxing the public on this one, we're stopping you guys making this?
I agree 100%. And it's symbolised by the Food Standards Authority. It is very hard over on safety. So every waiter, waitress has to ask you, do you have any allergies? And all the food is unbelievably rigorously and bureaucratically checked for safety, that it's not going to actually poison you. But in terms of nutritional content, there's no supervision by the FSA on that. In fact, we took those powers away from the FSA, which is completely the wrong mindset. And therefore, we have this food. Half the food that we eat as Britons is not cooked by ourselves. So we don't really know what's in it. And quite often, it's crammed with fats and sugars that create this very addictive combination that, is really tricky to give up once you get into that loop. That's madness. We need to reboot and think again about our
How
food.
do you reboot without becoming a nanny state?
Well, I think that if you ask parents, if you ask families what they want support from the government to be able to create a safe food environment so that their children end up well, and a third of children are either fat or overweight, that their parents are going to have a successful older age, that are not going to be dragged down by the kind of dementia that comes out of obesity. That they want support. I don't think they're thinking that this is a nanny state problem. They're thinking it's a state stepping up to its responsibilities problem.
I agree with what he's saying there. I had pizza yesterday.
Yeah.
And I swear to God, it was like eating a bucket of salt.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, but this is dough, and this is, why is this so salty? The salt taste was horrendous on it. It was a takeaway. And I just think that there are things that are killing us. I mean, you go on. What do we have on there? What's that? Instagram. Yeah. Instagram or whatever. And you get these films on whether it's French fries or whatever. And the French fries fine, but they're not made of potato. And they've got this added and they've that added. The French fries, I don't want to name what company or whatever we're talking about here, but they're not potatoes. Most fast food outlets aren't serving you potatoes.
I know, it's a difficult one. You're going to come back, which is great.
You're going to come back after it, so we want people to put questions to you.
In one number, what chance do you give West Streeting of actually doing anything really meaningful with the NHS in the next 5 years?
That's such a good question. I don't know. I am really hopeful that he's going to see through everything he says he's going to do. He's got the right formula, and I hope he has
He's talking the talk well, isn't he?
Absolutely is.
Yeah.
And he has a big political licence. You've got Rachel Reeves on side, who's given him some money.
He's got his money, yeah.
He's got a massive, great big majority. He's given the doctors some money. So he's done some of the good things. But my goodness, I've been in that job, or at least I've been a junior minister.
Yeah.
It is really tough.
Yeah.
And he's going to go into this winter and suddenly be reminded.
He seems quite sincere about what he's doing.
He does. Very sincere. But then a lot of people are hopefully in that sort of job. But it's whether or not he can deliver. Because we were saying this yesterday, actually, on the programme. Uniquely, a Labour government is sort of allowed to tinker with the NHS. I
hope so.
Whereas a Conservative government is much more suspicious.
Well, I hope he has the stamina to look down the barrel of the camera and tell people that they're going to need to change their behaviours, and to tell the clinicians, the doctors, that they're going to have to adapt to the modern world and do things in a slightly different way.
Well, let's talk about his strategy next.
Lord Bethell, thank you for the moment. After 7 o'clock, Lord Bethell will be back. Anything you want to put to him about what the Conservatives did, what way they failed, or did they fail? Did they have it right? What you would do with the NHS, get in touch, have your say.
And how would you feel if you were fined when you didn't turn up for your appointment?